What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast as a proud partner of the Gyro Step Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac, coming to you with another solo pod, this time talking about the Packers hiring former Arizona Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon uh, to replace Jeff Hafley, who was hired away from the Packers to the Miami Dolphins, courtesy of John Eric Sullivan, their former front office member who was hired as the GM there. So Packers doing a little bit of searching for a defensive coordinator, end up with Jonathan Gannon, head coach of the Cardinals, formerly a defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. So this little short solo pod talk a little bit about how I feel on the Jonathan Gannon hire, sort of good, bad, meh in the middle. We'll talk a little bit just about what this means going forward for the Packers and how it's sages to set up their defense. So, first and foremost, Jonathan Gannon, uninspiring as a head coach, but was pretty darn good with the Eagles when he was there in 2021 and 2022. Coached, I think, what was ended up being the fifth best uh, defense in terms of takeaways, which we love, eighth best in terms of points, and second best in terms of yards. So there was a pretty darn good defense to begin with, coming off of a Super Bowl win. But I wanted to, before we get into them, talk about some of the candidates that were rumored to go to the Packers or had taken interviews or just swirling around. Um, Brian Flores ends up re-signing with the Vikings. I would have loved a Brian Flores. I think that would have been a lot of fun to see him be aggressive, especially with Micah Parsons and company. Raheem Morris was a name that went around. I don't know if he got an interview. Another guy from the McVay/Shanahan tree that I think is good friends with those groups as well as Matt LaFleur. So um, he ends up not. I don't think he's employed yet. Trying to think of others. The Jim Leonard, uh, the Jim Leonard train was rolling pretty heavily down the tracks until this news broke. I think the Packers were. I don't want to say not scared of losing Gannon per se, but they couldn't have Leonard in for a lot of interviews or hire him away until the Broncos lost this afternoon. So this news ends up coming before the Broncos even play today, dropping Sunday morning. But um, there's just a lot of names. I don't think Gannon was ever named as a candidate that they brought in, but he has the job now anyways to lead this defense, hopefully to some high high achieving seasons is like I guess what I'll say to get the best out of these guys. Um, I guess first and foremost, my thoughts on him are I'm not. I guess I'm whelmed. He had a pretty good defense in Philly, but he goes to Arizona, and that those defenses just weren't good. And from all that I've seen from Cardinals beat reporters and people just talking online about what he was given in Arizona, like it was a raw deal. He didn't really have all the players, which like yeah, he was 15-36 as the Cardinals head coach. There wasn't really a lot of talent there, especially on offense with Kyler Murray getting hurt every other year. I think he tore his ACL in 23, came back in 24, and then obviously this year was plagued with injuries as well. And so, uh, not the best situation for Gannon in his first head coaching stint, and so maybe he can get back to his defensive play calling, uh, I guess prowess with Green Bay. My biggest thing is I really don't know what to think of. He had a really good defensive set of players in Philadelphia and got the most out of them, or if he was carried by how good they were, or if he couldn't translate that to getting the most out of average players in Arizona, right? This is from Alicia Tversky, a beat writer for USA Today Sports, saying he goes, seeing a lot of takes on Jonathan Gannon's success in Philly was due to a loaded defense. He said that doesn't seem to line with reality. He goes, under Gannon, Hassan Reddick had the best season of his career. Brandon Graham racked up a career high in sacks at age 34. Josh Sweat had the two best seasons of his career. TJ Edwards and Darius Slay both had the best seasons of their career per PFF, as did Milton Williams. C.J. Gardner-Johnson posted a career high in interceptions in just 12 games. Avonte Maddox had 2 of the 3 best seasons of his career per PFF, and James Bradbury finished second-team All-Pro, the only AP honor of his career. This is still the tweet. I don't blame Packers fans for being skeptical. I have my doubts as well, but to me, that looks like someone who got the most out of his players as a defensive coordinator. If that's the case, like, I'm all for it. Where I have trepidations, I guess where I'm a bit hesitant to be okay with the hire, is what, if we're being like honest, if we're being realistic, what level of players do the Packers have here in Green Bay? Micah Parsons, an all-pro level player. Xavier McKinney, an all-pro level player. Adrian Cooper is on his way. After that, it gets a little tentative, right? Like, Evan Williams and Javon Bullard are great players. Like, they're going to do well in this league. Do they keep Quay Walker? Like, that's another question that needs to be answered, and how they're going to treat the linebacker room. The front needs some work, obviously. And so, if he can get the most out of average players and make them into good or even great players, that'll be fantastic. But it's kind of hard to think he'll do that when he had average players at best in Arizona and wasn't really making the best. The teams just weren't there, which I guess not entirely. There's some stats I'll talk about here in a minute that make it seem like it wasn't all bad in Arizona, but it just is a little worrisome looking at this defensive roster coming off of a season where it was really good for the defense for a good chunk of it. But then once Micah Parsons goes down, it was not so good, right? Like, they really couldn't find any sort of pass rush or things like that. And so it'll be something to watch for sure. This is from Matt Freilich. He is with, if I can check real quick, the Pack a Day podcast with Andy Herman over there. He has an overview of Jonathan Gannon's defense, so this is a bit long, so please bear with me. He says Jonathan Gannon's defenses are typically zone-heavy and conservative, prioritizing limiting big plays over aggression. The results have been volatile, peaking with a top 10 unit in Philadelphia in 2022 before sliding to an inconsistent bottom-tier outcomes with Arizona the last 3 years. Persistent issues showed up versus the run and in pass rush consistency and late-game adjustments. Trends and notes: zone-heavy scheme, multiple 3-4 fronts and 4-3 hybrids with a coverage-first system influenced by Matt Eberflus. Run defense struggles 23 versus the run with the 2022 Eagles, and then 27th in defensive success rate in 2023. Inconsistent pressures, late game issues, and discipline does not equal production. Emphasis on structure, but bottom 5 EPA per play 2 of the 3 seasons in Arizona. Jumping from that, the late game issues are where I'm my half of my concern right now. This is from Mina Kimes. The Arizona Cardinals defense, this is from October 8th this year. The Arizona Cardinals defense ranks first in EPA per play in the first 3 quarters of every game. In the fourth quarter, they dropped to 27th. It's a problem. Like, that is a problem. Like, if you can't close out games as a defense, like, that, you're just making the game that much harder on yourself. And it comes with a coach and a head coach. Like, I don't want to be just talking about Matt LaFleur's detriments here, but Matt LaFleur also doesn't really know how to coach ends of games, right? We've seen this time and time again where he can't hold a lead. Like, we saw that in the playoff game versus the Bears. We saw it multiple times throughout his coaching career. He has a hard time putting the pedal down and keeping a lead and finishing out a game. If both your offense has trouble doing that and your defense has trouble doing that, it's not going to be a good time. And so hopefully that's something that gets fixed with just better players and maybe a different scene, a different situation coming to Green Bay and kind of getting out of that head coaching situation. So we'll see. Another thing I want to touch on is these are a couple of tweets from one Cody Alexander. He is he runs a Substack called matchquarters.com. Go follow him. He has a lot of good tweets. I'm pulling a lot of some stats here from from a little bit of thread he had Sunday morning about Jonathan Gannon. Uh, he said, because I'm a nerd, I've watched a ton of Arizona Cardinals tape since 2023, and there's some resources. Kind of showcases how Jonathan Gannon really is a conservative type of defensive play caller. Doesn't like to have a lot of big plays against his defense. Would rather um, sort of get to the red zone and lock down there. Runs a lot of cover two, runs a lot of cover three, and even then, I think looking at the his pressure dashboard that he has, um, Arizona was ranked second in the league in too high, like cover too high this past year. Issue is they were ranked 27th in yards per down when they do that. So um, a bit of a we know what he likes to run. Can the players do that sort of thing? And then Zach Cruz had a tweet this afternoon and said, Jonathan Gannon didn't call plays for the Cardinals defense, but only two NFL teams give up more points than Arizona during Gannon's 3 seasons as head coach. Cody Alexander then quote tweeted, so this is a players are greater than plays tweet. Arizona actually went out and got talent this offseason, and the defense was in the upper quadrant of a drop back per EPA per play allowed and rush EPA per play allowed until the midseason when the injury bug hit and the defense cratered. So they were in the likes of the Rams, the Seahawks, the Broncos, the Patriots defenses until they got hurt this season. So again, a lot of that is what can your players do? And that's kind of where I'm sitting of like, yeah, if their players can really lock in and I mean, that simplifies it, right? And run the defense that Jonathan Gannon wants to run, then yeah, I'd imagine the defense would be okay. But at the same time, I really do have some reservations solely on what he's able to do. Mostly just because like I wasn't inspired by the Cardinals stint. That's really all it does come down to, I guess, for me. And I guess time will tell on how it'll go. Like obviously time will tell. Like we won't know anything today, tomorrow, 4 months from now, 5 months from now, 6 months from now. I mean, honestly, this until this time next year when the Packers are either out of the playoffs or they're on their way to the Super Bowl. So it'll be a lot of wait and see, which is a lot of what this discussion is nowadays, or this time of year when you're discussing coaching changes and things like that. But it's gonna be interesting because like I think he can do it, but it like the draft and this free agency cycle really matters, right? Like they have to go out and address defensive line and the secondary. They just have to, otherwise like what are we doing kind of thing. But um, either which way, it's gonna take I think some upgrades at some key positions. Like a secondary edge rusher is a very very important uh, position to address right now as we figure out what Rashawn Gary's role is on this team and what like they'll do with his contract going into next season, right? Like that's just a big question mark. So I don't know. It's just I'm hesitant, but going back to the Cody Alexander plays versus players tweet, um, Dyer Carragher, he's I don't want to call him a beat reporter, but he writes for the NFL for PFF. Does Packers coverage for Packers Report 66. Um, Arizona Cardinals is a tweet from him. Arizona Cardinals had just 10 total coverage busts this past year under new defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, the third fewest of any defense, the ninth most, despite facing the ninth most pass attempts. So I guess where that leaves me is guys are going to be in the right spot, right? Like they're not going to have coverage bust. They're like the coverage is going to be there. Can you have the players to cover the coverage, right? And play the play properly. Like what comes to mind is you're not going to have Keyshawn Nixon standing in no man's land on a go-ahead touchdown against the Bears. Like that shouldn't happen under Jonathan Gannon if he's coaching all of his players correctly. Like you're just not going to have huge coverage busts, which honestly works for a bend don't break defense. I'm not a big fan of death by a thousand cuts and letting a team walk down the field every drive. But if it doesn't result in points, that's fine. I think for that to be your defensive philosophy, you have to have an offensive side of the ball, though, that's going to be scoring points almost every drive. Like you have to be consistently outscoring your opponents to make that defensive strategy worth it. Otherwise, you're gassing your defense every game into the fourth quarter and all year long into the end of the season, right? Like if they're just out there for more plays and the aggression isn't turned up, sort of like a Brian Flores defense, that's just more wear and tear on your defense. And when this defense is going to be anchored by Micah Parsons coming off a knee injury, you have to wonder like how effective is that going to be? And so going back to talking about this this offseason being an important one for Brian Gutekunst and the Packers really get this right. Like the draft is going to be probably pretty heavy defense. I'd be surprised if they took uh any other positions. They're like if they might address offense in the form of maybe a receiver, possibly a running back, maybe a tight end, but I don't think any of those positions are of urgent need right now. Like I think like wide receiver is maybe a sneaky need, but I would prioritize linebacker if they move on from Quay. Obviously cornerback, obviously defensive linemen, like and edge rushers, like are just more urgent needs than what could end up being a third wide receiver three or a tight end to replace Luke Musgrave behind Tucker Kraft or figuring out who's going to carry the ball once Josh Jacobs leaves, right? Like I'd rather just wait for a stacked 27 draft class where they're hopefully going to get comp picks for Malik Willis, Romeo Doubs, and Rashid Walker, and kind of go all in there because they're not going to have their first round pick next year either. And so I think I'm fine really addressing the defense this year and hoping that we can let those problems lie on offense for a year because they still have Christian Watson, they still have Matthew Golden, they still have Tucker Kraft coming back next year. Like Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed are still on this team. Like that is plenty of pass catchers when healthy, right? And so we'll see. But either which way, Jonathan Gannon, at the moment, I'm whelmed. I don't hate it. I don't love it either, just because like I've already mentioned. But I think it'll really come down to can he get guys focused and understanding where they need to be, right? That's really all it comes down to. Can they just be effective defenders under Jonathan Gannon? Can they not have busted coverage? Here's a good question. Can Jonathan Gannon teach him to tackle? Can he teach Carrington Valentine to tackle on the outside? So that'll be a good one. And again, who he brings in for staff will be important too. Like I forget who I saw say it, but on Twitter as I was just gathering resources for this pod. But if I'm Jonathan Gannon, the first thing I'm doing, this person had tweeted, is circling Micah Parsons, Edrin Cooper, and Xavier McKinney, and how do I leverage those three impact players the best? And that's got to be priority number one because those are your three difference makers. And even then, like if I wanted to circle a fourth one because I'm biased, I'm circling Devontae Wyatt too, because he's good and he can if they can really leverage this fifth year into something where they can hopefully get him on a good deal come next offseason, that'd be awesome because I think he has the ability to be a difference maker. Um, but to make no mistake, they're going to address defensive line in the draft as they should. So, a couple other quick news and notes prior to me hopping out of here. I think Tom Silverstein, Tom Pelissero reported that the Titans plan to interview Cliff Kingsbury and Adam Stenavich on Monday for their offensive coordinator position, under new head coach Robert Saleh, if I'm not mistaken, is their new head coach. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not gonna complain that Robert Saleh might hire Adam Stenavich for the play calling offensive coordinator. Or I think play calling defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator position. Um, that'd be, I don't want to say preferred, but I don't really know what Stenovich does here besides not coach offensive line anymore, which really was his bread and butter. And so, what I'm curious about now, frankly, is what does the coaching staff look like now that we have the coordinators in place? Like, if Stenovich gets hired away, they'll have to figure out a new offensive coordinator there, which they'll find somebody, and maybe it'll be exciting, maybe it won't. But either which way, like we haven't heard anything on Rich Bisaccia's employment, whether he's still with the team or not. I would hope that they're figuring this out sooner rather than later because they need to start hiring out these positions. But then, like we haven't heard anything about Luke Butkus either. Like with how bad the offensive line was this year, and in part of because of injuries, but I think there needs to be some changes on offense just to make sure that these positions are getting the most out of them per se. Like Jordan Morgan's development hasn't been amazing, right? Wasn't really used much in his first 2 years. Going into year three, it's a huge year for him, probably going out to left tackle to replace Rasheed Walker. And so I would just like to see the development, especially like who is the last player they developed on the line that they drafted late, right? Like Zach Tom in the fourth. But like I can't think of any of the late round linemen that they keep taking swings on making an impact at all. Like that's not ideal for your depth when your sixth, seventh, eighth offensive linemen have to be guys you bring in from the outside. Not that the ones you're picking up in the draft, right? Like the Packers used to be really good at this. Like David Bakhtiari, I think was a sixth round picker, fifth or sixth round pick. Like it turns into an all pro. They need to find more of those sort of hidden gems to stack their both interior and offensive lines with. And so I'm not a big fan of Luke Butkus. I would rather they move on from him. Same thing with Rich Bisaccia. But we're getting into the nitty gritty of the offseason where it's like, okay, like your your coaching staff should be figured out pretty quickly here. The combine is in like a month and a half ish, not even. And so you need to figure out who's evaluating the talent at the combine. You'd have a plan in place for who you're addressing in free agency and what those coordinators and coaches want. Like it's time to get going on all these decisions. So, um, but yeah, that's it from me on Gannon and then Stenovich. Like again, wouldn't be upset if Stenovich got hired away. I think he can be improved upon greatly in the Packers organization, but that's just me. So, all right, folks, that does it for me. Another shorty pod. I appreciate you hanging in there and listening. Jordan and I will be back soon to do grades for the 2025-2026 season. Um, Going through all of our preseason predictions and things like that. So, appreciate you as always. Check out the GSPN Discord. If you go to the gspn.info in the About section, there's a link to join there. I do mock draft Mondays, and whenever I feel like doing a mock draft while I'm at work. So come see what I'm looking at there. Kind of loving D'Angelo Pons from Indiana as a cornerback in the second round because I think that's their most important position to address. But knowing the Packers, they'll most likely pick something that stuns me and leaves me aghast. So check out Eurostep with Ty and Rohan as well on the Eurostep Podcast Network. Appreciate y'all listening. I'm gonna say go Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Seahawks, if we don't record before then. Seahawks 38-24 over the Patriots. That's my prediction. All right. That does it for me, folks. Appreciate y'all listening. Bye.